All right, I wanted to go back, I'm not gonna go back, but I want to reiterate what we talked about last week just a little bit. If we remember, the first six chapters in Daniel has to do with miracles, and Daniel writes in the third person about himself, during Daniel's life, and chapters written, there's one chapter written in Hebrews, and then the rest of them in that are written in Aramaic. But the part I want us to get is that this is, if you can remember, the main part is the first part of Daniel is during his lifetime. The second part of Daniel is after his lifetime. In other words, most of that is after, so it's prophetic, and so there's now it all don't go together. Sometimes it sometimes if you read, it's not always continuous. In other words, you don't just read it straight through. If you read it straight through, you won't be able to get it. In other words, you're gonna get some here, so some of it is out of place. So it's not gonna just all be in order, and it's not gonna be consecutive, but it's gonna be short. Some of them will be short in duration, some of them will be longer, and some of it will overlap. It'll come back and cross over each other, and it covers two different periods of time. And the two different periods of time that it's covering is BC, which we look at it as before Christ, and then the last part of it is AD, after Christ, and so but that's the way we look at it there. So we're going to talk tonight. We're just coming out of, we're going to talk a little bit about Daniel. We talked about him being in the lion's den. Remember when he was in the lion's den, and we remember how the King Darius, he was worried about him. He is one of the Persians. He is a Persian, and he is one of the Persian kings that come in and took that place in there. We talked about last week how he had lost the other one, Nebuchadnezzar's son, or his grandson actually, lost the nation to the Medes and the Persians. So they came in and they took over. And now we're getting into the part. To me, it's really interesting what's coming up. We see though, and the one thing I wanted to say is Daniel. Why do we think he was able to? I mean, I don't know too many people that's ever been thrown into a lion's den. Do you guys?
No.
I mean, I don't. Why do you think he was able to do that? And what about the three Hebrew children? You know, they went into the fiery furnace. What I'd like for us to come away with and to think about, you know, they were faithful in the small things. They were faithful to God in the little things, and they were faithful to God in prayer. And if we're faithful with the little things and we're faithful to God in prayer, we'll be able to come through the bigger things that come in our life.
They had a strong foundation.
They did. They had a real good, strong foundation, and they stood upon it. And we've got a strong foundation if we stand upon it. But it's all in where you stand. And they stood firm on what they did. But I want to go to the 7th chapter tonight. I didn't want to just leave Daniel out of it. We've heard the lion's den so many times. Not that there's not good stuff there is. But I want to go to the 7th chapter tonight. And we're going to talk about the four beasts here. that Daniel saw. In the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon, Daniel had a dream, a vision of his head upon his bed. Then he wrote the dream and told the sum of the matter. Daniel spake and said, I saw in my vision by night, and behold, the four winds of the heavens strove upon the great sea. And when you see that strove upon the great sea there, it's talking about sea of people or nations that strove upon. In other words, that's kind of what that sea means in that area. Same way as it did in Revelation, when it was talking about sea there, it was talking about people. It wasn't talking about necessarily a sin, but it just talks about, when it says the sea, when it talks about the sea here, the winds of the heavens strove upon the great sea. And who's the prince of the air? Somebody said it.
The devil.
The devil's the prince of the air, and so he's basically working havoc among the nations, is what he's doing. That's what he's seeing here. And four great beasts came up from the sea, diverse one from another. So they came up out of the people. In other words, it was people. They were people, is who it was. They came up out of that. And we have here the lion and his wings. I'm gonna put this other picture back up here. I made it bigger because somebody said they couldn't see it, so I don't put a big one. See there? You see that? Oh. Poor guy, he can't stay up. I think they got a piece of metal there. Wait, let me scoot this over. Hang on just a minute. Just got to redo what I'm doing there. All right, there we go. That's the Colossus that Daniel was seen by King Nebuchadnezzar here. And Belshazzar or Nebuchadnezzar is this first beast. That's that lion. He is taking over. He was taking over all of that known country. He was like a lion, but it was pictured in the fact of his wings here. Do you remember when he got? We talked about it last week when he got captured and. When God took the kingdom from him, He said his hair was going to grow like feathers, and that's what this is, just a picture of him and those feathers, and then those claws and things there. He was a beast in there, and it says and all the. And at the end of the day, Nebuchadnezzar, we look over to verse 14 of chapter 4. And at the end of the days, I, Nebuchadnezzar, lifted up my eyes unto heaven, and my understanding returned unto me. And I blessed the Most High, and I praised and honored him that liveth forever, whose dominion is an everlasting dominion, and his kingdom is from generation to generation. So he no longer, Nebuchadnezzar, he no longer saw himself as in control. In other words, he knew when God put him and he was caged up, or he was in the wild, and his hair grew like feathers. His nails got like claws, and that's the way it was for 7 times. For 7 years, he was like that till 7 seasons passed by. But it happened until he recognized that there was a God in heaven, and he recognized that he is the one that holds up kingdom. He realized for the very first time that God's the one that put him in his kingdom. And he realized that God's the one that takes down kingdoms. In other words, he realized it for the first time. The bear that we're going to see here is this is the Medes and the Persians. Now in that bear, let's go back over here and look at it right quick. And I was considering, behold, and a beast might be more cold than living, and I was considering, behold, and he goat came from the west on the face of the whole earth, and touched not the ground, and the goat had no. I'm in 8. I'm in chapter 8. No wonder it's not reading right. It didn't sound right. All right. And 4 great beasts came up from the sea, diverse one from another. This is the first one. Nebuchadnezzar is the one that come up out of the people. It was Nebuchadnezzar. He's represented by this head of gold, and he's also represented by this beast here. The first was like a lion and had eagle's wings. I beheld till the wings thereof were plucked, and it was lifted up from the earth, and made stand upon the feet as a man, and a man's heart was given to it. In other words, he was in that condition until he realized, till he got hold of himself. And behold, another beast, a second like to a bear, and it raised up itself on one side, and it had 3 ribs in its mouth, of it between the teeth of it. And they said thus unto it, Arise, devour much flesh. Now, this is the Mede and the Persian Empire, and they actually, those 3 ribs represent, because when they took over, they were kind of over Babylon, Egypt, and Lydia. That was the three places that that's what they were over. That was their empire right there. Look with me to Daniel 7 and 5. No, that's the one we just read. And after this I beheld, and lo, another like a leopard, which had upon his back of the 4 wings of fowls. The beast had also 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. Now this leopard is Greece, and Alexander the Great was the one here in Greece, but it had the 4. It was over 4 countries. I don't know if I brought that little piece of artwork or not, but anyways, it was divided into 4, and whenever he died at the age of 31. Is what he did. He died at the age of 31. He didn't last long, but he was taking over like crazy. And when he died, they divided that kingdom into 4 different people. And I don't have that with me. I wish I'd brought it. But there's 4 different people that took over, 4 different kings that took over that nation right there. And then the last one that you see is the dragon. And that bit of information there is that dragon. That dragon is Rome. And Rome will go right on through until the end of time. In other words, there's still that presence of Rome today. It's still out there. It's still working. It's working through the papacy, and you see that down here. It's kind of pictured with the 2 legs, but then one day it's going to be divided. That kingdom's going to be divided. It's going to have 10 different heads over it, and it's the European. I think it's going to be the European Union. I don't know that for sure, but it's already kind of set up right now. There's already 10 out there. And I kind of think, now when it says taking over the world and all that, you got to realize that what Daniel is seeing is not, he's not seeing so much the United States, he's not seeing it. He's seeing Israel. In other words, Israel is the world, and those four nations, those four, what do you call it? What I call it, the four great empires, and that's the ones it's over there in that place, and they're all and Israel is always sandwiched between two of them. In other words, when they're fussing and fighting one another, they're right in the middle of it. It's kind of the way it always works out. But this is, I think that's going to be those 10. I think it's a 10-year pen. I think they're going to kind of take over. I think they're not going to take over, but it talks about those kings over there in Revelation. Look with me to Revelation chapter 19. Back over here, I'll make sure I'm in the right place. Revelation 19, verse 20. Couldn't remember where I put it, but I wrote it down. Revelation 19 and verse 20. And the beast was taken, and with him the false prophet that wrought miracles before him, with which he deceived them that had received the mark of the beast, and them that worshipped his image. These both were cast alive into the lake of fire, burning with brimstone. So one of these days, this big stone that we saw up here is that everlasting kingdom. That's the Lord Jesus Christ. And it's going to roll down here, and it's going to hit, and it won't happen until all these 10 heads are in control. But it'll happen if you remember us reading in Revelations where 3 of them are going to rise up against each other, and they're going to realize that we've got. If you remember, Antiochus Epiphanes is the one that he's the one that took over the Rome. He's the one that was in Rome at that time. Antiochus Epiphanes, and he is a picture. He was horrible, and he probably did more damage than Hitler ever thought about doing. He was just, matter of fact, Hitler thought he was something else, and he kind of patterned himself after him. But if you remember in Rome, Antiochus Epiphanes, he took Jewish people and put them on poles all across the road going to Rome, and he lit them up with fire, and he had the torches, and he'd set in his where it was that he'd sit, and he'd watch them at night burn, and watch those fires burn. That's the way he treated it. He didn't like it. He didn't love the Jews. He didn't want the Jews. He wanted them wiped out. That's what he was trying to do, was to wipe them out completely. Now, he didn't get to do that, but the same hatred is going to be, he is the image of the Antichrist who's coming. So you can see that down here when Antiochus Epiphanes, I can't pronounce it now, but when he came in, he is the picture of the Antichrist, which is going to be at the end of time. Us as Christian people, I showed you this last week too. The ram here, the ram that we saw is the ram that's talked about in chapter 8 is going to be, it's the Persian Empire, the same thing. And then you've got, it was a pretty big empire when it took over. There was Turkey up here, and Egypt down here, and you see where, and this is the modern day Iran now, is what that is. And then England's up here, but they would travel through what they call the crescent. In other words, there was, if you could look at the map, there was sort of a crescent area that was fertile area, and anytime any of these kings come, anytime they went to attack somebody, they go around that crescent. They couldn't go across this I can't remember, Baltic rock area, but the camels couldn't go across it. They couldn't walk across it, and so they would go around that crescent. That crescent, what that was like a ditch or a sandy area where they come through, plus they could feed their troops. The only other way to get to some of that would be to go around through the desert, and if you went through the desert, they couldn't survive in order to attack. And so whenever they go through that crescent, what I'm trying to get to, when they go through that crescent, you can't see it off of this picture, but they had to cross through Israel and that country right there, because they were right in the middle of it all when they would cross through. But anyways, the Persian is by this is pictured by this ram. It's got one horn that's bigger and one horn that's smaller. And that horn that's bigger, is the Persians, and the smaller one is represented by the Medes. And so that's how that's pictured in that. We'll see that when we get into 8. And then the Greek Empire is the goat, and that's Alexander the Great. He just went around just butting everybody out. And he was taking over. And then when he gets all done, he dies at an early age, and then we got Luke can't read on right. Anyways, he took over Turkey, and there was another. Seleucus was over this part of it here, this bigger area, and then you got the other fellow was over Egypt, and so there was 3 of them or 4 of them that took over, and that's what's represented here by that picture of those 4 heads right there. There's those 4 areas that was taken over right there. So we see that. So that's where that all comes in, and then once they get all that done, the goats here, and then you got Rome, which is coming in. That's the one we talked about a few minutes ago. And then Daniel, when he was looking, I made these a little bit bigger, but Daniel, when he was looking through his prophetic visions that he saw, he could see Babylon, which he talked about, or which he lived during that time. Then he was in part of the Medes and the Persians, and then we got the Greek, and he saw the Romans. He saw all the way up till Jesus Christ came the first time. And then he saw straight over the top, and then he could see this bit right over here. And what he's seeing over here is the second coming of the Lord Jesus Christ. And he saw that, but he didn't see this gap in here. He couldn't see that. He couldn't see the church. And that's why it was blind to all the Jews. God kept them from being able to see that. But this is where we are right now, is in this gap right here. Now, I want to go over to Matthew. We'll finish up with this. Matthew chapter 24 tonight. Sorry about my brain not working good. It does. It's 3 in the morning. I got up early and started putting some of this together, and that's the reason things don't come back like they should sometimes. So y'all just, but what I'm trying to do is get you to see it when you read it. When you read it, you'll be able to see these animals. You'll be able to see what he saw, and you'll know what it means when you read it, and you'll be able to tell who these are. And when we get into chapter 8 over there, you'll hear where it talks about the goat, and you'll know that's Alexander the Great right there when they talk about it. Yeah. But anyway, Matthew chapter 24. We'll start verse 3. And as he sat upon the Mount of Olives, the disciples came unto him privately, saying, Tell us when these things be, and what shall be the signs of the coming of the end of the world. Now, Jesus is talking here, and Jesus answered and said unto them, Take heed that no man deceive you, for many shall come in my name, saying, I am Christ, and shall deceive many. And you shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you be not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. For nations shall rise against nations, and kingdoms against kingdoms. There shall be famines and pestilence and earthquakes in diverse places. So if you take that into consideration, you see all of this has already happened when Jesus was talking to them. All this has happened. And then you know how much trouble that Israel has had over the last few years. And a lot of times when the Lord's talking, they're talking about over there in that part of the country. And then shall many be offended, and shall betray one another, and shall hate one another, and many false prophets shall rise and shall deceive many, and because iniquity shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold. But he that shall endure unto the end, the same shall be saved. And the gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness unto all nations, and then shall the end come. So I believe that the Lord is just waiting until all of these people, everybody's had an opportunity to hear in this area. But you see right down here, Alexander the Great's already been here. The northern, southern kings, and then that's where you get those legs that's on there, that northern and southern kingdoms right there. And then Antiochus has already been, he was horrible. And then it comes on down. When you therefore shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet stand in the holy place, who readeth, let him understand. Then let them which be in Judea flee unto the mountain. Let him which is on the housetop not come down to take anything out of his house. Neither let him which is in the field return back to take his clothes. And woe to them that are with child, and to them that give suck in those days. But pray ye that your flight be not in the winter, neither on the Sabbath day, for then shall be great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time, no, nor ever shall be. And except those days should be shortened, there should be no flesh be saved, but for the elect's sake, those days shall be shortened. Then if any man shall say unto you, Lo, here is Christ, or there believe it not, for there shall arise false Christs and a false prophet, and shall show great signs and wonders, in so much, if it were possible, they shall deceive the very elect. And so that's during this time right here, what he was seeing. He didn't see that big gap. He's looking from across this time when Christ, from that first time, and then he sees Christ coming as the millennial reign. He's seeing that. So shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. And that part right there, so shall be the Son of Man coming, shall also be, and that's what he's talking about right there. For wheresoever the carcass is, there will the eagles be gathered together. And then it says here in verse 25, immediately after the tribulation of those days shall the sun be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light, and the stars shall fall from heaven, and the powers of heaven shall be shaken. And then shall appear the signs of the Son of Man in heaven. And then shall all the tribes of the earth mourn, and they shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven, which with power and great glory. Now that's not the rapture. That's not the rapture. That's the end times. That's right here at the tribulation period. And he shall send his angel with a great sound of trumpet, and they shall gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other. And that's right after the tribulation. He's going to take over. That's when this big old stone, I don't know, it's coming down that mountain. I think it's been headed down that mountain a long time. But anyway, that's when he starts to take over. And then, once you get over here in the 36, but of that day, now this is for us, but of that day and that hour knoweth no man, no not the angels of heaven, but my Father only. But as Noah were, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. For as in the days where before the flood they were eating and drinking and marrying and giving in marriage until the day that Noah entered into the ark, and knew not until the flood came and took them all away, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. And that'll be right in there. That'll be right in there when the Lord raptures his saints out, right in here, right before the tribulation period. Tribulation period will be right in there somewhere. That's 7 years. Right before that 7 years, we'll be taken out. Then shall two be in the field, the one shall be taken, the other left. Two women shall be grinding at the mill, the one shall be taken, the other left. Watch therefore, for you know not what hour your Lord doth come. What did I say? Did I tell you he was going to come after the tribulation or before? He's coming before. Just making sure I said it right. He says, watch therefore, for you know not what hour your Lord doth come. But now know this, that if the goodman of the house had known what watch the thief would come, he would have watched and would not have suffered his house to be broken up. Therefore, be ye also ready, for at such an hour as you think not, the Son of Man cometh. So he's coming. Jesus is coming. He could see this millennial kingdom, and he knows that Jesus is coming back, but he couldn't see this gap. And so what Daniel saw was a combination of the first and the second coming together. In other words, that's what he was seeing. And for us, we know it. The reason we know it when he's coming is because of all that's happened here. We knew this is history. We saw it happen. We knew it happened. And we know we're in this church age right here. And then right before the tribulation, he's going to take us out. And then the tribulation is going to start. And that's when that Antichrist is going to pop up. And here's the picture of the Antichrist right here, which is Antiochus Epiphanes, and he's pictured there. And and he'll be right over here. And he was in that Roman government. It's probably gonna be the Roman government, most likely. It's probably still gonna be the Roman government, because that's where all those 10 heads and all that stuff is going on. Still probably gonna be that spirit of that Antichrist that's gonna come through all that. So, but anyways, that's what Daniel's seeing here, is that we're seeing the whole history of the world, right on up to the tribulation, right during the tribulation period.
It's all built on weak foundation.
Yeah. That is true. And it's gonna come tumbling down. All that, they're building on man's things, and they're all, you know, they can't even get along in this. They're just getting farther and farther away. The closest one to the Lord was probably the first one, because God made him. God dealt with him, and he saw. He might be a saved man. I don't know. Anyway, that's it for tonight.